If you wanted to keep track where the short and long 10mm bolts go, you can actually look at the water pump and tell. The shorter ones will actually be the smaller bosses right here, real small, shallow, not too thick at all. That's a short. As you work your way around, start getting thicker. That's going to be long, and then we're back to another short. And then the rest, of course, is our 13, our 16, and another long. This right here is actually the bolt for the mounting point where that idler pulley went, that the long 13 went through. 13 actually goes into the timing cover. And that's basically what's going on with these bolts. The short 10s go directly into the timing cover. The long 10s actually go into the block. They actually go all the way through the water pump versus going to the timing cover right behind it. Of course, here's our new gasket. Nothing too fancy. Rubber seal, so that does not require any kind of RTV or silicone. I've gone ahead and made sure I've counted all 12 bolts being taken out, so now I know everything's there. Now she's held in place with the gasket. The rubber seal is bonded to it temporarily, nothing major. You're just going to give it a good tap. There we go. Now it's gotten loose. Now we can work it. It finally pops off. You may get the gasket one to stay on the block or the timing cover. It may come off with the water pump. Just make sure you do remove it. This one's actually stuck on pretty good. There we go. So gasket, we're going to throw that away. Now all we got to do is go back and just clean the surface real good. You don't have to go too crazy with it because it's already a smooth surface to a point anyway, because it's just a rubber seal up against it. So just give it a nice little clean up, and then we'll work on going ahead and reinstalling the water pump. Like I said, just pay attention where the long bolts, short bolts go. You already know where your 13 and your 16 go. Don't worry about the larger raised up area. That's where the belt idler goes. So let's go ahead and clean it up, get the gasket, new water pump back on. Alright, for those of you that might want a torque spec on those small bolts, they're actually going to be at 8 foot-pounds. 8 foot-pounds isn't much. So if you've got a torque wrench, you want to make sure they're the right torque, 8 foot-pounds, excuse me, on the 10mm bolts going around the water pump. I personally don't use a torque wrench on that. I've kind of over the years have got a feel about how far I think I can go as far as tightening down without doing any damage. A small ratchet is fine. Start using something big like this. Once you start tightening down, you got too much leverage, you'll probably snap it off. And if you really want to make sure you're not over tightening it, palm your ratchet. That way you're not using the end, you're doing this much. But if you got access to a torque wrench, not everybody does, you can go 8 foot-pounds. Remember that, 8 foot-pounds. That's on the smaller, I say smaller, they're the same. I know I said earlier about the different lengths, but when I say smaller, I mean the 10mm bolts compared to that 16 and the 13. So just worry about your 10. You want to torque it down. You heard it here. I gave you the spec for all those out there that want specs. You got the specs from me. 8 foot-pounds. You heard it here first. Now there's a very important item you need to keep in mind when you're doing this job. Usually I would have left you right after I got the water pump off. You know the installation's always the opposite of removal. That I tell you time and time again. There was nothing special about installing that. Now the thing I want you to keep in mind is actually getting all the air out the coolant system. I have a means of getting most of the air out. I have an apparatus that I can hook up to the radiator neck, and it actually pulls a vacuum, gets all the air out of the coolant system. And you can actually watch radiator hoses collapse flat when it does it. And then when I open it back up, I've got a hose that goes into a bucket of coolant. It just sucks the coolant back into the system. But that still is not completely foolproof. And not everybody has one of these air evac systems for the coolant system. The manufacturers of the engine actually helped you with that. They gave you a bleed screw. The bleed screw is right here on the thermostat housing, right where the upper radiator hose goes in. Even though I'm bleeding mine a certain way, I'm still going to check it using this bleeder. I'm going to top off the radiator as high as I can get it. I want to let it keep settling down. I'm going to keep filling it back up till it finally gets to a point where the radiator is completely full and it's not moving anymore. So now I'm going to go ahead and open up that bleeder. I'm going to open up that bleeder. It probably takes, I would say, no more than 2-3 complete turns. Once I finally got coolant coming out of this bleeder, then I know all the air from the engine is out. I can close off the bleeder screw and go ahead and top off my radiator, put my cap on, and I am confident that I've got all the air out. If you don't get all the air out, then you're going to have a problem with it wanting to run hot, and we don't want these aluminum blocks to run hot. Aluminum doesn't like heat, not excessive heat. If that, it'll go ahead and start warping things, and you don't want that at all. So one thing, like I said, always use that bleeder screw to double check that you've got all the air out, because what happens is that thermostat is closed currently because the engine's cold. As we're filling it up with coolant, we're going through the radiator, it's going through the lower hose, it tries to go through the upper hose, but gets blocked by the thermostat. The lower hose is starting to fill the block up. Well, the block still got air trapped in it. As that air goes up, it gets on the back side of the thermostat. Now you could run technically the engine till it warmed up, the thermostat open, and get the air out. But like I said, we want to work smarter, not harder. And I don't have all day to sit here and get the air out. I've got to move on to the next job so I can make a living. So what I recommend doing is opening that bleeder. This bleeder actually has a port that goes to the back side of that thermostat. So once you open this up, you're basically purging air that's inside the cooling system on the opposite side. As we keep adding antifreeze and that bleeder is open, eventually all the coolant will raise up inside the engine and come out of that port, letting us know all the air is gone. Go ahead and shut it. Don't over tighten it. All you got to use is a large Phillips screwdriver. It's already got the impressions in there for that. But this is a key item, a key point that is very important. Make sure you do not miss this. Once you've done this, you're ready to put the air intake pipes back on, going up to the air filter, and your job's pretty much done, other than going and washing off the bottom of the catch pan and engine where all the coolant went. Make sure you do that. Very, very, very important. Alright, we've got our radiator filled as high as we can get it. We're going to open up this bleed valve. Like I said, it takes a few turns. It'll probably be more than enough. That's probably good right there. I want to go ahead, and as you're watching it, I want to go ahead and start filling the radiator back up. As air gets purged out, the level will drop. And there we go. Didn't take much on this one because that air evac really helps that I'm using. I'm going to go ahead and tighten it back down. Now, we're completely confident we've got all the air out of the engine. No more worries about overheating. Now just top off the radiator, put the cap on. Alright, I've shown you everything I can tell you on this 3.6 liter doing the water pump. Hopefully I've given you enough knowledge, give you a little confidence, feel like it's something you can take on yourself. It's not one of the harder water pumps, it's a fairly simpler one. I would say start to finish, probably hour and a half. For someone that's probably never done one, we do them all the time. It's roughly an hour for us to do it. Just take your time, make sure you remember the steps that I told you. You shouldn't have any problems. Once again, I always appreciate you watching my videos. There's a reason why I make them. I want to help people save money. Also give them some knowledge so if they do go somewhere to get it worked on, they know what's involved. That way they understand why the mechanic's taking so long, if it is a job that takes a long time, or if you already know it takes an hour and he's back there goofing off, or if they want to overcharge you. Otherwise, I feel that anybody with some basic mechanical abilities that's worked on cars at one point or another can handle this job no problem. Just make sure, I'm going to keep saying that, make sure you get all the air out of the system. That's the main thing right there. Once you do that, you're good to go. Otherwise, thanks again, and don't forget to subscribe. Tell your friends.